I stood in front of the gleaming glass doors of the Chase Bank. In my hands was a worn blue folder with frayed corners. The cold morning wind slipped through my thin coat, but it was nothing compared to the coldness inside my heart. I looked at my reflection in the glass. A 68-year-old man with hands covered in calluses from working double shifts for 30 years. I sacrificed everything to raise my son. But what did I get in return? After my son got married, he started treating me like an old debt that needed to be thrown away. But today inside this bank, I was about to sign a surprise gift that would leave them with nothing. Welcome to the channel Dad's Real Life Revenge. I'm Arthur. Stay with me until the end of this story because you are going to be shocked. And do not forget to leave a comment with the name of the city you are watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. Everything began 3 years ago when David brought Samantha home. Back then I smiled. I thought I was gaining a daughter. At first Samantha was as sweet as honey. She praised my garden. She promised she would take good care of David. But right after the wedding the mask began to crack. "Dad," Samantha said as she raised an eyebrow and looked around the living room. "This house feels so outdated. The smell of old wood makes me feel suffocated. I think we should sell it and buy a modern apartment downtown instead." I tightened my grip on the coffee cup in my hand. This was the house my late wife and I built together. Every brick carried our sweat and sacrifice. But Samantha did not care. Her eyes were not looking at me. They were fixed on the wall behind me where I kept the property documents. I saw a flash of ambition in those sharp eyes. I chose to stay silent because I loved my son. I did not know that silence would become the beginning of a cruel plan. Samantha's presence in the house was like icy water, seeping into every crack of my family. She started with little things. Moving my wife's flower vase. Replacing the cream-colored curtains with cold gray fabric. Then she began cutting the ties between David and me. Our joyful weekend dinners slowly disappeared. In their place came excuses about being busy. Family outings I was never invited to. Samantha was incredibly skilled at isolating me. She created an atmosphere that made me feel like an unwanted stranger inside my own home. The breaking point came last Christmas. In 56 years, I had never spent Christmas alone. That morning I woke up early. I prepared pancake batter and warmed the maple syrup. I eagerly waited for Leo's laughter and David's familiar high five. But the house was frighteningly silent. I walked upstairs and found their room empty. A note was taped to the refrigerator. "Dad, we took Leo to Samantha's parents' house for Christmas. Samantha said you needed some quiet rest." David. I stood frozen in the empty kitchen. The sound of my fork touching the porcelain plate echoed harshly through the silence. For the first time in my life, the maple syrup on my pancakes tasted bitter with abandonment. I ate in the dark because I could not bear the emptiness of the room around me. Samantha had succeeded. She had turned me into a ghost inside my own home. I looked out the window and saw the neighbors' lights sparkling warmly. They were laughing together, and I was alone with fading memories. Every bite I swallowed felt like a stone pressing deeper into my chest. I wondered what David was thinking. Did he remember all the Christmases when I worked extra night shifts just to buy him the toys he dreamed of? Probably not. Samantha had brainwashed him too well. My patience had limits. I was willing to ignore everything until what happened at Leo's birthday party. That was the moment I realized this woman's cruelty had no bottom. Leo's 5th birthday party was a terrible day. I had spent an entire month working in the woodworking shop downstairs. I carefully carved each wheel by hand. I polished the body of the train with the finest natural oil I could find. It was a wooden oak train, and I had engraved Leo's name along the side with all the pride of a grandfather's heart. I wanted my grandson to have something truly meaningful, something powered not by batteries but by imagination. When I carried the gift into the room filled with shiny wrapped boxes, Samantha looked at it with obvious disgust. She did not even bother touching it. "Oh, look at that," she said mockingly. "An old dusty toy. Dad, you do realize Leo only plays with toys that meet international safety standards, right? That wood could have splinters. It could scratch his hands." I froze. David stood there, but he would not look me in the eyes. Instead, he bent down and adjusted an expensive remote-controlled airplane. Samantha picked up my wooden train using only the tips of her fingers as if she were holding a bag of garbage. Then she tossed it into a cardboard box in the corner of the room. The box for things that were about to be donated or thrown away. "Just leave it there," Samantha said to David. I don't want cheap junk taking up space in our son's room. My chest tightened with pain. That was not just a toy. It was my sweat, my effort, and my love carved into wood. And David stayed silent. He had completely chosen his wife's side. In that moment, I felt like a stranger interrupting the party of wealthy people who no longer needed me. Quietly, I walked away while they began cutting the birthday cake. No one noticed I was gone. I returned to my room and shut the door behind me. I sat there in darkness, feeling the collapse of the family I had spent my entire life building. Samantha did not just want my assets. She wanted to erase my existence. She wanted me to disappear just like that wooden train. The hurt inside me slowly transformed into a cold, burning hatred. I was no longer sad. I started watching. I started listening. And that was when I realized Samantha was hiding a secret far darker than her arrogance. 3 days after Leo's birthday party, my phone rang at 8 o'clock that evening. It was Samantha. Her voice over the phone sounded sweet, rustling like dry leaves underfoot, but I could feel the poison hidden beneath it. "Dad," she said softly, "David and I have been thinking a lot about your future. You've been forgetful lately. This house is far too big and dangerous for an elderly man living alone. We think it's time you had some professional financial planning." I tightened my grip on the receiver. The financial planning she talked about was really a death sentence for my freedom. She started mentioning a retirement home in the suburbs, a place she called paradise for seniors. But I knew it was nothing more than a glass cage where she could easily control everything I owned. The next morning I quietly went to the Chase Bank. I did not tell David. I wanted to review my savings accounts myself. When I sat across from the financial advisor, she looked at me with sympathy in her eyes. "Mr. Arthur," she hesitated, "3 days ago, a woman claiming to be your daughter-in-law came here. She brought an unsigned power of attorney form and asked very detailed questions about your current balances." The blood in my veins turned cold. Samantha had already come here before me. She was not waiting for my permission. She was hunting down every dollar I had spent my life saving. She wanted to know how large the prey was before swallowing it whole. I walked out of the bank. The sunlight was bright and golden, but I felt freezing cold inside. Samantha was not just a gold digger. She was a ruthless predator. She was studying guardianship laws. She wanted to prove I was mentally unstable so she could strip away my right to control my own life. I sat down on a stone bench in the park across from the bank and watched people passing by. That was when I realized I could no longer remain a sheep waiting to be slaughtered. If Samantha wanted to play a financial game, I would show her who truly controlled the board. But first, I needed to know whether she was drowning in debt or planning something far darker. I pulled out my phone and called an old friend. "Miller, I need your help. I want you to investigate someone." The truth that was coming would hit harder than any of us expected. Detective Miller arranged to meet me at a small diner on a quiet street corner. He slid a brown folder across the table toward me. The worry in his eyes was impossible to hide. "Arthur," he said quietly, "your daughter-in-law is more than just greedy. She's standing at the edge of a cliff." I opened the file. Numbers began dancing before my eyes. Samantha owed $63,000 to a casino in Atlantic City. She had been using David's credit cards to stay afloat, but things had spiraled beyond control. The debt was growing every single day under vicious interest rates. That was why she was desperately trying to force me to sign over the house. She needed cash fast, before debt collectors came knocking at her door. But that was not even the worst part. Miller flipped to another page. This is her computer search history. Samantha had been carefully researching the symptoms of early-stage dementia. She had been looking into ways to fake medical reports and declare me mentally incompetent. If she succeeded in gaining guardianship, every asset I owned would fall under her control, and I would be locked away in some cheap nursing home for the rest of my life. Rage erupted inside me like a volcano. I had started wondering whether I truly was getting old. But now, I felt sharper than ever before. Samantha thought I was a weak old man, an easy target. She had no idea that before retirement I spent my entire life dealing with ruthless and manipulative people in business. I closed the folder slowly. "Thank you, Miller," I said. "Now I know exactly what I need to do. I would not just protect my assets. I would let Samantha dig her own grave with the endless greed consuming her soul." I returned home wearing a quiet smile. I began pretending to forget little things. I left my keys in the wrong places. I repeated the same questions again and again. And every time I acted confused, I saw Samantha's eyes light up with excitement. She believed her plan was working perfectly. What she did not know was that I was weaving a massive trap, and she was the prey. My revenge began with an unbelievable number. I needed bait large enough that she would never be able to resist it. The recording device I placed on the table was actually nothing more than a garage door remote. But the truth Samantha confessed would destroy this marriage forever. I began my performance on a Saturday afternoon, while everyone was gathered in the living room. I pretended to search through my coat pocket for an old document. Then I muttered loudly enough for Samantha to hear. "Oh, this memory of mine. I have no idea where I put those stock certificates. And the coastal property papers, too, not to mention the trust funds. Altogether, it's worth more than $4 million. I saw Samantha freeze instantly. The wine glass in her hand tilted so sharply it almost spilled. Her entire expression changed. The usual contempt vanished, replaced by wild hunger. I could actually see her pupils widen. Even the sunlight reflecting off the broken glass outside the porch was not as sharp as the greed awakening inside her. "What did you just say?" Samantha stepped closer, her voice trembling. "You have stocks and real estate worth $4 million. Why have we never heard about this before?" I pretended to look confused. I stared at her with dull, distracted eyes. "Didn't I mention it before? Maybe I forgot. Those investments go back to when I was still working in the city. I plan to leave everything to Leo when he grows up. But lately I haven't been feeling well. Maybe I should find someone trustworthy to manage it for me." Samantha took a deep breath. Then she sat beside me and grabbed my rough, calloused hand. Her fake kindness was so exaggerated it made me sick. "Dad, you can trust us," she said softly. "David is your son, and I'll take the best care of you. You don't need to worry about those numbers anymore." I looked straight into her eyes. I could see calculations moving faster than a computer behind them. She was already figuring out how much of the imaginary $4.4 million would erase her gambling debts, and how much would remain for designer handbags and luxury vacations. In reality, I only had $200,000 in savings. But that fake fortune was the perfect bait. That entire evening, Samantha treated me like royalty. She cooked all my favorite meals. She gently tucked a blanket over my shoulders. But later, standing in the darkness of the hallway, I saw her hurriedly whispering into her phone. She was preparing the final paperwork to seize a treasure that did not even exist. Everything was unfolding exactly as planned. I had lifted her to the peak of hope, and now it was time to take her to visit the very place where she intended to throw me away. Samantha could not wait another second. Early Monday morning, she drove me around to visit several nursing homes she had already chosen for me. She called it a practical tour, to find the best retirement place for my future. I sat in the passenger seat, pretending to doze off, but through half-closed eyes I watched every movement she made. Samantha drove with the confidence of someone who already believed she owned millions. She hummed softly to herself, as if the fortune was already sitting in her pocket. We stopped at a facility hidden deep beyond a thin forest. From the outside it looked elegant and expensive, but inside the place radiated a terrifying coldness. While a consultant guided us through the building, Samantha pulled aside the manager for a private conversation. I remained behind a thin wall and listened carefully. "If I sign full power of attorney," Samantha asked in a cold voice, "can you guarantee he won't be able to leave on his own? I want him under special supervision. He shouldn't have too much contact with the outside world. It could worsen his confusion." My chest tightened with rage. She did not just want my money. She wanted to erase my existence. She wanted to lock me inside a prison disguised as a nursing home, while she freely spent the money I had sacrificed my entire life to earn. I stepped back into view, wearing my best dazed expression. I nodded at everything she suggested. Samantha smiled with satisfaction. She believed I was completely under her control now. "All right, Dad," she said as we returned to the car. "This afternoon we'll go to the Chase Bank and sign the power of attorney documents. That way you won't have to worry about managing those $4 million anymore. I'll take care of everything for you." I stared out the car window. The passing trees looked like scenes from my life flashing by. I remembered my late wife. I remembered David as a little boy clinging to my leg. And now, I was heading toward the bank for the final step of my plan. When we walked into the Chase Bank lobby, Samantha straightened my collar like a loving daughter. She whispered sweet lies into my ear about a peaceful future. What she did not know was that Detective Miller was already waiting inside the office with evidence she could never deny. The office door slowly opened. The bright neon light spilled across Samantha's glowing face, shining with ambition and greed. This was the moment every mask would finally be torn away. We sat inside the VIP office of the bank. Samantha placed the power of attorney documents on the table, her hands trembling with excitement. She pushed the pen toward me. "Dad, you just need to sign right here," she whispered. "All your burdens will disappear." I picked up the pen, but I did not look at the papers. I looked directly into Samantha's eyes. The greed burning inside them was terrifyingly obvious. Then I slowly placed the pen back down. "I'm not signing," I said in the calmest and coldest voice I could manage. Samantha froze instantly. The smile on her face stiffened. "What do you mean?" she stammered. "Dad, you must be confused again. Let me help you." "No, Samantha, I'm not confused. And I'm not mentally unstable." I leaned closer. "I know about the $63,000 debt in Atlantic City. I know about the times you sneaked into my room searching for property documents. And I also know about your plan to lock me inside a nursing home so you could steal my assets." The color drained from Samantha's face before turning dark with panic. She tried to jump out of her chair, but at that exact moment the office door opened. Detective Miller walked in carrying a thick stack of evidence detailing her attempts to forge medical records, declaring me mentally incompetent. Samantha started breathing heavily. Her eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal searching for an escape. "You're insane," she screamed. "You can't do this to me. I'm your family, and what about the $4 million? Are you just going to let it rot?" I smiled bitterly. "That's the best part, Samantha." I paused. "The $4 million never existed. It was bait. I wanted to see how far you were willing to go for greed. I only have $200,000 in this account, and you will not receive a single cent. If you have been listening this far and want stories like this to keep coming, hitting the like button and subscribing truly helps. 97% of people never do, but that small act is what keeps this entire channel alive." Samantha completely collapsed into the leather chair. Her usual arrogance vanished. All that remained was a pathetic woman, finally facing the truth. But her nightmare was only beginning. Suddenly, she exploded in rage and revealed her true nature completely. "You manipulative old man," she hissed through clenched teeth. "You think you've won? I'll take Leo away. You'll never see your grandson again." Samantha shot to her feet. She swept the folder off the table, sending papers flying everywhere, her face twisted with fury. "You think you're so clever," she screamed at me. "I'll destroy your life. I'll take Leo and disappear from this state. You'll grow old and die alone without ever touching a single hair on that boy's head again." I remained seated. I looked at her with nothing but pity. Then the office door opened once more. This time it was not a bank employee. David walked in. His face looked pale and exhausted. His eyes were bloodshot with disappointment and pain. In his hand was a stack of divorce papers that had already been prepared. Samantha froze completely. Her lips trembled. "David," she whispered, "what are you doing here?" "I can explain." "There's no need," Samantha David replied in a hoarse voice. "I was in the next office listening through the internal speaker system. I found out about your gambling debts 3 days ago because of Dad. I didn't want to believe it. I kept hoping you would stop. But trying to throw my father into a nursing home just to steal his money is unforgivable." David placed the divorce papers on the bank table. Beside them, he set down a temporary restraining order issued by the court. "You're not taking Leo anywhere," David said firmly. "I've already arranged temporary custody proceedings. You should focus on dealing with your legal problems with the casino." Samantha collapsed onto the floor. She burst into desperate sobs and grabbed at the leg of David's pants, begging for forgiveness. But David stepped back. He looked at her like she was a stranger, a predator finally caught in the trap, created by her own greed. I stood up and placed my hand on my son's shoulder. I could feel him trembling. The truth always hurts. But sometimes it is the only medicine strong enough to save what remains of a family. Samantha looked up at me with pure hatred burning in her eyes. In that moment she realized she had lost everything. No money, no power, no family. David and I walked out of the bank together, leaving Samantha behind with her desperate screams echoing through the hallway. The afternoon sunlight stretched long across the sidewalk outside. I took a deep breath, but our story was not truly over yet. The stormy days finally faded into the past. Samantha was forced into gambling, rehabilitation, and faced investigations for financial fraud. My house no longer carried the coldness of manipulation and deceit. David moved back in with me so the two of us could raise little Leo together. We spent many afternoons side by side in the woodworking shop downstairs. The sound of the saw and the scent of fresh oak brought peace back into my soul. Sunday dinners returned to the backyard once again. The smell of grilled meat filled the air, while Leo's laughter rang across the lawn as he pushed his wooden train through the grass. David looked at me with deep regret in his eyes. "Dad," he said quietly, "I'm sorry for letting blindness cloud my judgment." I smiled and held my son's hand. "What matters is not how we fall," I told him. "What matters is how we rise together." I sat down one evening to write a new will. I still decided to leave a small trust for Samantha. Not because I was weak, but because I wanted her to have one real chance to rebuild her life after prison. I believe in mercy. True revenge is not destroying your enemy. It is living a happy life without allowing hatred to poison your heart. I watched Leo carefully holding the wooden train Samantha once wanted to throw away, and in that moment I understood a priceless truth. The richest person is not the one with the most money. It is the one surrounded by people who love them for who they truly are. Money can appear and disappear in an instant, but love, loyalty, and honor are treasures no amount of wealth can ever buy. My journey at the bank that day came to an end, but it also opened the door to a new chapter filled with hope for my family, and that is how I protected what mattered most. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this journey. If this story helped you appreciate the value of family, share it with the people you love most. And do not forget us here at Dad's Real Life Revenge. I stood by the window looking up at the star-filled sky, and I knew that somewhere out there were still fathers suffering through injustice in silence. But remember this: the truth always finds a way to come into the light.